Okay, so let's look at the CSS file that we were working with yesterday. We had the CSS and HTML that we were working with yesterday. We're just going to reuse today. Let me grab that from CSS intro. Oops. L. Open recent. Yeah, test something. Could somebody Slack the HTML? Oh, I think I did Slack them. Let's see. No, that was to-dos. Could somebody Slack the HTML and CSS that we were working with yesterday? It was so, I think I called them test CSS and test HTML. It had a few divs and we put a border around it.
That's from the lab.
No, not from the lab.
That's the HTML.
But actually, okay. But this, yes, this one. So let's create just call it CSS Selectors .html selectors .css. Could somebody Slack the CSS? Oh, it's okay. Thank you. Oh, this is fun. So yeah, you didn't have that much CSS. I'm just gonna change your. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Cameron. These two are the files that we're going to be working with: test CSS and test HTML. They're in the 6.2 web code challenge. Not challenge, code. And that, just to review it, it has some lists. It has an H1, a URL list, and everything is wrapped into div tags. We also have a table here, and other stuff like a form at the bottom as well. Okay, so I just named my file CSS Selectors.html because that's the topic of this. You could name them anything you want. Now I need to fix here the link to the style sheet because my name is different. I need to do CSS Selectors.html. Cool. So we have this HTML file and CSS. Now let's open this in our browsers. And we see this. Is everyone with me here? Are you all seeing this page? This is good. We can work with this. Did everyone manage to get the HTML and CSS and are seeing the same stuff on the screen? Let me know once you get there. Cool. Everyone got the page? Okay. Let me put this on Slack then. So if you go to the 6.2 webcode channel, you will see the two files that I have, which is CSS Selectors, HTML, and CSS. Cool. Everyone on the same page? Thumbs up if you're on the same page. Thumbs in the middle maybe if you need more time. Okay, let's give 2 more minutes to those people that need more time. So do you remember yesterday that I said that CSS is complicated, right? I feel like I was frustrated with CSS for some time. And that's because I underestimated how complicated it was, or how complicated it can be. And this is the book that I was talking to you about. This is a book on CSS. And it's this thick. And you will not see a JavaScript book that is this thick. This is like a copy that I keep for myself, but I'm going to leave it here in the class if you want to come and consult anything from CSS. This is like the subtitle is CSS, the Definitive Guide. So this probably has everything you will want to know about CSS, and this is a very reputable publisher for programming books, O'Reilly. So yeah, it's going to be here if you want to consult. This, of course, has everything that we're going to talk about today. Cool. So CSS selectors. So we saw some of them. We saw how to grab elements from the DOM by ID with the $sign and then the name of that ID, right? We saw that also applies to CSS. We were able to grab something that had an ID in our page. Let's look at the. Actually, let's backtrack a little bit. We're going to see something called the simple selectors. There are some of them we have already seen, like ID, class, and elements. And the simple selector, they are basically those three: type, or grabbing an element, or styling the element by the tag name, grabbing it by the class name and styling by the class or by an ID. So we saw that in here we have this div. We say this is our selector, the div part of it, and this we are using the tag name to grab that element and select it, right? What are these called again? These lines that go inside these curly brackets, Jonathan?
Properties and values.
Properties and values. And how do we? There is one word that we use to refer to both property and value. Declarations, correct. Mm-hmm. And this, as a whole, we say this is a CSS rule. This is a rule that applies to all divs and says to make their width 350 pixels, make their margin 10 pixels all around, add a border of 5 pixels that is grooved with a gray color, etc. So this is how we can style elements by whatever tag they use. In this case, the div. If we want to style the p tags, we will do this. Let's see what that does. Nice. We see all the p tags, which are only 2, will have that applies to them. Mm-hmm. So you could select elements in your websites by specifying what tag they are or what type they are and style them like that. So that one is, I think, the simplest selector, just sort of grabbing the element by the tag name, right? Now after that we have the ID selector, which we already saw. And the ID selector will be, for the ID selector to work, we will need to assign to our elements an ID, right? Because we want to uniquely identify an element in the page, and if we do so, then we can grab that element and style only that element. Cool. So they must be unique, and let's look at some example of that. Actually, yesterday we saw some of those. So let's see. What would be a good place to put an ID? Let's put this to this H2 on line 15. I'm going to add an ID that says second heading, because I uniquely want to identify this heading, and this is the second one. The first one is this is my website, and the second one is let's make a list. And also note here that for an ID is just another attribute on an HTML element. You do the equal and double quote or single quotes and whatever name you want to give that ID. It's convention to use dashes or you can separate this in different ways. If you have an ID that's more than one word, you could use dashes to separate the words. You could use underscores, or you could use camel case for multi-word IDs. Google recommends the underscores, I think, but ultimately it comes up to your personal preference as to how you separate them. So here I gave this H2 .id, let's go. Let's put our div is back. Let's make sure. Let's refresh our page. Everything is back. Now I want to style that specific H tag. How can I do that? Hashtag, and then what? And then the ID name. Second heading. What property should we give this ID, this heading? We can change the color. Let's say color. Let's try another more interesting color. Yellow-green. Now let's refresh our page with Command R, and we got only that one specific H tag will have that color. So IDs must be unique. Well, they will not break your code if they're not unique, but it will just be better practice to have a unique ID. It's just like us humans that have identification cards, right? You want an ID to identify you uniquely, right? If you get somebody that has the same ID that you do, then it's probably an imposter. Right? Questions on giving the element an ID, and then styling the element by the ID. Let's see what else I have in here.
What's the difference between ID and class?
Say that again?
What's the difference between ID and class?
Oh, so let's go on to classes, and maybe the contrast will help that. Yeah. Okay, so another way in which we can style elements in the web is by giving those elements a class and grouping them by some common quality that we, the developers, decide. That can be, let's say we want to style all the list items no matter where they are. I could create a class, let's say item, that will give to all my elements, and therefore I will be able to grab the elements by the class name and then be able to style them. So let's look at that next. So let's leave this one. Let's leave the second color. Now let's have where would it make sense to have the class? The LIs. I was thinking of seeing if there was another better approach, but let's see. I think we had something here. So, okay, so this is a good one. Basically we're going to give all the headings a class. What do they share in common? They're all headings, right? We can say we have we can have a class that represents all of them, which will be just headings. So let's do that. Let's do to all the headings. I'm going to add a class that says this is a heading. Oops. Now, in classes, we'll get to that. So for now, I'm going to do all of them are a heading. You can get rid of it for now, yes. If you leave it, that's okay too. We're gonna get to see what happens when you have more than two. So this is another heading. Let me just copy this. It's two. I think I have all of them. Okay, everyone has the class heading in all their headers? Okay.
Actually, I like the line 15 ending with a space.
Yeah, so let's just get rid of this. All of the H tags will have a heading.
Does it matter if that one's ID?
Oh, thank you. That was what you were trying to point out. Sorry.
Oh,
Class. Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Cool. All the headings have a class heading. Now let's see. So let's say now we don't want only the second heading to be yellow-green of the color yellow-green, but we want all of them to be color yellow-green. So instead of having them styled by ID, now that we have a shared class that all the headings shared, we could say period heading. And then this period here just means class in the same way that the hashtag means ID. Right? This is how CSS is able to differentiate whether you want to style by class or by ID. Classes will be ID. Oh, classes will be period. Yes, Joanne? Sure. Because all the H elements have a class heading. Okay, everyone with me here? Let's refresh the page. What do you think is going to happen? Any speculations? Shar? And why so? Because they all share the same class. So refresh, and we have all the headings are the same color. Note that it doesn't matter whether it's an H1 or whether it's an H2, because we gave them that class, we are grabbing them or we're styling them by the class. So it doesn't matter what kind of element it is. If I give it this class, the color will be yellow-green. So classes is so that we can group elements together and style them together. Right? Elements that share some stuff in common. What's another example? We can come up with another example of when would we use a class? Sort of in a different context than headings. Hubel? That's a good one. If you have a group of pictures, you want to make them all the same size, we could use a class for that. Yeah. Cool. Let's say maybe, and sort of like taking that into similar to this case where we have different H1 tags, maybe you have different images that are, maybe one is an icon and another one is a photo. Right? But all of them, what they share in common is that they're both images at the end, and you will group them with a class and style them with a class. Questions on classes? So classes and IDs, two attributes that you put on your HTML code by which you can style and grab elements from your page. Yes, Douglas?
Is there a way you can add a class to make JavaScript to HTML? Or is that getting too weeds?
That's good that you have those kind of suspicions, because yes, there is a way in which you can manipulate classes from JavaScript, add classes from JavaScript as well. Any other questions? classes. I was thinking, I'm not sure if we could go to the CSS tricks.
Quick question.
Sure.
So let's say element has an ID and a class.
Uh-huh.
What will the precedence if you
Hmm.
edit? Yeah.
That's a good question. So if, let's say this is let's say this has an ID of like the second heading. Actually, add an ID here, the second heading. I added an ID here. That is, so now this H2 has not only a class, but also an ID. So we can grab this element sort of in two ways, or style it in two ways. One through the class, and one through the ID. What happens if we try to do both? What happens if we try to style all of the elements that are in the class, but also that one with the ID? So I want you to do this and try what you get. So this is the second heading. Color blue violet. So, and then refresh your browser and tell me what you see.
Towards second.
Oh, thank you. So we added the H2. The second H2 has a class, and it also has an ID. The class is heading. The ID is, we call it second heading. Now add this to your CSS, which we're trying to style something by the ID. That's the hashtag. And what do you get? So that's to the question of Sharar, which is which one will take precedent? Which one has more weight? Or priority, yeah. Which one would apply? Some of you see the changes? Cool, let's refresh the page. Now we have, instead of that H1 being yellow-green, is blue-violet. So that is because IDs is more specific. You could say it has more weight, more priority over the class, right? It's I think I had all the headings, and then I have a class. A class can still have multiple elements, and then from the class we move on to the ID, where we have an element. Those are good questions. Thank you, Malik and Susan. Other thoughts? We can see that OL, LI. What is this? Let's also, again, where have we seen some of those? Any examples where we have seen those tooltips when you hover over stuff? Not sure. Oh, right, I think some pictures when you hover solid pink. Oops, sorry. The images. So what I want to do is add to this image alt. Oh, so this alt is wrong because we are seeing a cat, not a puppy. So cat laying down. Okay, so we have the two images as the title. So here,
Little like sort of updates.
yes, we don't have a P with more than one line, so this style, yeah.
Where did